The third generation of the BMW M3 rolled off the assembly line for the first time in the year 2000 and went on to sell a staggering 85,000 units worldwide during its 6-year production run that ended in 2006, making it the best-selling M car in BMW's history. At the time, a brand new E46 M3 MSRP'd somewhere between the high 40,000 to the high 60,000s depending on the spec, with most falling in the mid $50,000 range. When accounting for inflation, a $55,000 M3 bought in 2006 is equivalent to about $70,000 in 2020, which is right on par with the base price of the 2020 BMW M4. But it still begs the question, all things considered, what is an E46 M3 worth today? Everywhere I look, people are practically shouting from the rooftops that you need to pick one of these cars up before they become unattainable. But is now really the time to buy? Well, in today's video, my goal is to answer those two questions with the research and data that I've collected for the E46 M3 market, right after you smash the like button. What's up everyone, Tire Kickers here, and I purchased the E46 M3 that you see beside me at the beginning of 2017. Check out my review if you haven't seen it already. Because I own this car, I like to casually monitor the market just to see what's going on. What I'll say up front is that values are appreciating for some of these cars, and have even caught the attention of well-informed automotive journalists like Doug DeMuro, who has claimed that he believes there will come a time when you will reminisce on the fact that you could pick up an E46 M3 or E39 M5 for only $40,000 to $45,000. Although that may be true for the nicest examples, there are a ton of factors to consider when determining the value of these cars. Whether the car is coupe or convertible, SMG or manual have significant influence on the value. But some other questions to answer include, does the car have a desirable exterior and interior color combo? Is the car fitted with the competition, premium, or cold weather package? What model year is the car? How many miles has the car been driven? And perhaps most importantly, what is the overall condition of the car? Luckily, I've already done a decent amount of legwork by analyzing 150 of the most recent sales published on the automotive auction site Bring a Trailer. The purpose of today's video is not to answer why values are increasing, but instead to analyze the data objectively and see what kind of conclusions we can draw. I mentioned that I analyzed 150 of the most recent E46 M3 sales on Bring a Trailer, with the first sale in my data set dating back to October 2018. 120 of those sales were coupes, with the remaining 30 being convertibles. Digging a layer deeper, 86% of the coupes that I analyzed were fitted with the 6-speed manual transmission. So right off the bat, you can see that the manual coupes are dominating recent sale history on this site. The cheapest M3 was a 166,000 mile 2003 carbon black manual coupe with cinnamon interior and sold for a mere $10,000 in May 2019. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the most expensive M3 was a beautiful and tastefully modded 2003.5 Laguna Seca Blue manual coupe with black interior that sold for $90,000 in July 2019. I'll admit, the car looks incredible, but you have a lot of options at that price. To me, this was just a textbook gotta have it situation. Regardless, it goes without saying that this is a huge range, and it's pretty easy to see that the $90,000 M3 is a significant outlier. But there were actually 2 more M3s that sold for more than $50,000 and another 5 M3s that fell in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. Pretty freaking crazy, right? Luckily, the average and median values tell a more promising story for those of us that can't drop 50 grand on a used BMW. The average M3 in my data set sold for $24,392.03 with almost 72,000 miles on the clock. And the median car rang in at $22,000. That's not nearly as terrifying, but we haven't even looked at how the specs affect the price of the car. Buckle up because I'm about to throw a ton of numbers at you. Starting with the body style, coupes sold for about 28% more than the convertibles, despite having almost 46% more miles. Manuals also sold for 28% more than the SMG transmission, while having 16% more miles on average. Honestly, no surprises with those numbers because the coupes have become highly sought after, and the second generation of BMW's sequential manual gearbox is notorious for requiring expensive repairs. With that said, let's turn our attention to another value influencer, color. The most common exterior color sold in our data set was titanium silver at 26 units for an average price right around $19,500. The second most common, jet black at 20 units for an average price in the low $23,000 range. The most expensive color was Laguna Seca Blue, which sold 12 units for an average price of almost $34,000, followed closely by silver gray, also with a count of 12 cars sold, and an average price just over $32,500. So looking at this data, it's clear that certain colors demand a premium. Again, I wouldn't say this is a surprise, but it helps to understand the numbers. Moving to the interior, a little over 57% of the cars sold in our data set were fitted with black Napa leather and averaged at nearly $24,500. Surprising to me when looking at this data was that cinnamon and dove gray have an almost identical average value. I think this was largely due to the condition of the cars with cinnamon, in addition to the fact that 9 of the 28 cars with dove gray were paired with Laguna Seca blue and averaged right at $29,500. From my perspective, well-kept examples of the cinnamon interior should absolutely sell for prices similar to the Mola Red, if not slightly higher. The competition package, or ZCP, is another major selling point for the E46 M3. Only offered for the 2005 and 2006 model years, the competition package comes fitted with larger brakes, 19-inch alloy wheels, a steering rack with a reduced steering ratio for marginally better handling, and an Alcantara steering wheel that actually gets rid of all but one button that controls the M-Track mode that essentially makes dynamic stability control a little less invasive. 17 of these ZCP cars were sold for an average price of $31,359.41 with an average of 68,582 miles on the clock, which is 29% more and only about 3,000 miles less than the overall average E46 M3 we talked about earlier. Long story short, expect your wallet to take a decent hit if you want the competition package. Next, we're talking mileage. Without digging too much into the weeds, the best fit trend line exhibits a negative power relationship, which really just means that cars with lower miles are going to be considerably more expensive than cars at the upper end of the mileage spectrum. Following the trend line, cars with 50,000 miles average around the $25,000 mark, and M3s with 100,000 miles average around the $19,000 mark. Obviously, there are cars above and below the trend line depending on the specs and condition, but it still helps to see how mileage affects the price of the E46 and that even a 201,000 mile M3 could sell for $15,500, although this particular car was fitted with Dynan's supercharger system. Last is the model year and condition of the car. It's important to note that for the 2004 model year, BMW made a slight facelift by adding LED taillights, modifying the trunk latch, and addressing the rod bearing issues that plagued the earlier models. For our data set, 45% of the vehicles sold were the pre-facelift model years and averaged just over $22,000. The remaining 55% of the M3s were the post-facelift models and averaged just over $26,000, or about 18% more than the pre-facelift cars. Mileage isn't much of a factor here, as the difference was only about 2,300 miles. For added perspective, Hagerty, an insurance company that specializes in classic cars, estimates the average price of a pre-facelift E46 M3 at $23,100, with the post-facelift variant coming in at $32,000, a difference of about 39%. That's more than double the 18% we calculated using our Bring a Trailer dataset. For condition, I'm going to leverage Hagerty's valuation tool since they have the expertise when insuring these cars. Hagerty has this information displayed on their website, which I'll link below, and they categorize the cars into 4 overarching conditions. The top of the line, about as close to perfect as you can get cars, are classified as concours. For the E46 M3, Hagerty values the pre-facelift cars at $49,800 and post-facelift at almost $69,000. Good God. These cars are few and far between, so the second category covers the cars that could win a show despite having a few extremely minor imperfections. For the E46, the pre-facelift is valued at $36,300 and the post-facelift at $48,600. Hagerty classifies the next group of vehicles as good and encompasses the cars that may have had paintwork done but are still mechanically sound. These cars represent the average E46 M3 we talked about earlier and are reasonably valued in my opinion. The last category accounts for the cars in fair condition. These cars are the daily drivers with evident visual flaws and probably need some loving. The pre-facelift cars are valued at $15,500 and the post-facelift at $21,500. Just like we saw in the Bring a Trailer data, this is a huge price range. To say that some E46 M3s are worth $15,500 while others are worth almost $70,000 is hard to believe. But after looking at the recent sales history, you see that these numbers reflect reality. One final thing to note is that Hagerty suggests a 25% value reduction for the SMG M3s, which is very close to the 28% we observed earlier. On the surface, it may seem dumb to go for the SMG, but it might be worth it if you can snag a decent deal that leaves you the option to swap in a manual if you want to do that. We've looked at a ton of numbers, so let's discuss some of the conclusions we can draw. The data supports the assertion that late model year, manual coupes with a unique or rare color combo in excellent condition paired with the competition package and less than 50,000 miles are going to command the highest prices. There are dealers around the country that have picked up on this trend, places like Enthusiast Auto Group, and specialize in selling like new E46 M3s. Those are the types of cars that will see considerable appreciation and are honestly already out of the reach for most buyers. The cars listed on Bring a Trailer represent some of the best examples available in the E46 M3 market. Although I'm sure you can find cheaper examples in your local area or on sites like Car Gurus, I think the data set we've talked about today gives you a good benchmark to work from. From my perspective, I think there will still be attainable examples for a while, but whether you should actually spend the time, money, and effort to work on these cars is your call to make. Some of the value reducers to be aware of beyond the obvious high mileage and poor condition include convertibles, SMG transmissions, dove gray interior, and cars that haven't had the VANOS or subframe issues addressed. But just because the data suggests that these cars are worth less doesn't mean they're worse cars. It really just means that on average, a convertible will be cheaper to purchase than a coupe. If you're looking for the absolute best car to add to your collection, now is undoubtedly the time to buy because these cars will only continue to appreciate. For everyone else, I think it's a matter of holding out for the best car that your budget allows and forgetting about the rest. Enjoy the car without worrying about the appreciation because if we're being honest, cars aren't exactly the best investment. At the very least, you can rest assured knowing that the value of this car isn't going to plummet overnight while you enjoy the car for what it was designed to do. Drive.